My baby is home. Just 8 words. Typed in all caps. Pinned with exclamation points. Just 8 words from a proud mother on her Facebook page. But those 8 words carried the weight of years. Of waiting, of worry, of prayers whispered into tear-stained pillows. She'd waited for this day like it was Christmas morning. She'd cleaned the house from top to bottom, cooked his favorite meal, and told every neighbor, every cousin, every church friend, he's coming home. God finally answered my prayers. And 6 days later, 2 body bags rolled out of her house. One for her, and one for the teenage son she hadn't expected to bury before she turned 60. What happened inside that house on Snowden Drive wasn't just a tragedy. It was a betrayal so deep, so raw. It left a small North Carolina community frozen in shock and a mother's legacy rewritten in blood. This is the story of Daron Jenkins, a woman of faith, a woman of heart, a woman who believed in second chances, and how that belief cost her everything. So settle in, because we're not just going to look at what happened. We're going to look at why it happened and what we all missed. Before her name was printed across headlines and her porch became the backdrop for police tape and news cameras, Daron Jenkins was just a woman trying her best. She wasn't famous. She wasn't wealthy, but she was loved. Everyone on Snowden Drive knew Dana. She was a neighbor who brought soup when you were sick, who waved at passing cars like she knew every driver by name, and who never forgot your birthday, even if you forgot hers. Dana worked full-time at a local warehouse. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, and it paid the bills. More importantly, it gave her something to hold on to when life tried to break her. She'd been a single mother most of her life. 2 boys. One, her sunshine. The other, her storm. But she loved them both. With the kind of love that moved mountains. With the kind of love that made you believe anything broken could be made whole again. Her youngest, Daryn, was the light of her world. 15, smart, polite, loved music, played piano at church. He didn't just walk into her room. He lit it up. He was her best friend. The one who sat beside her in church every Sunday, who helped her bring in groceries, who whispered silly jokes in her ear during boring sermons just to see her laugh. They had the kind of bond that made people envious. And then there was her older son, Daryn. Daryn had always been different. A quiet kid, moody, prone to outbursts. By the time he was 19, he had a rap sheet that read like a slow descent, petty theft, assault, breaking, and entering. Nothing that made the news, but enough to keep Dana up at night. Still, she never gave up on him, even when he went to prison, even when he stopped writing back, even when everyone else said, let him go. She held on, because that's what mothers do, right? So when she found out he was coming home, her joy couldn't be contained. My baby is home, she typed on March 25th. A simple post, a mother's heart on full display. A woman reclaiming the family she thought she'd lost. But what she didn't know was that she'd just welcomed death into her home. Low heartbeat sound slowly fades in, soft tension building. The thing about tragedies, they never feel like tragedies until the silence comes. And for Dana's cousin, Lorraine, the silence came first. March 31st, Monday evening, 5:28 p.m. She hadn't heard from Dana all day, which was strange. They usually talked every afternoon after work. She called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. She figured maybe Dana was taking a nap, maybe out getting groceries with Daryn. But by 6:03 p.m., something in her gut twisted. She got her car and drove over. The lights were off. The front door was closed. Dana's car still in the driveway. Lorraine knocked. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. That's when she walked around to the side of the house and saw the back door slightly ajar. The rest is the stuff of nightmares. She never even made it all the way in, just far enough to see Daryn's shoes, just far enough to smell the coppery sting of blood, just far enough to scream so loud that 3 neighbors came running before she could even dial 911. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. But for Dana and Daryn, it was already too late. They'd both been stabbed repeatedly. Dana near the entryway, Daryn in the hallway, like he'd tried to run. It wasn't a burglary. Nothing was missing. It wasn't a drug deal gone wrong. Dana didn't even drink. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No strangers. Just her son, Daryn, sitting in the living room, covered in blood, silent. When they arrested him, he didn't fight. He didn't cry. He didn't even blink. He just stood up and walked to the squad car like he was waiting on it. Back at the station, detectives tried to make sense of it. Why would a son murder his own mother and brother? There was no immediate answer. No suicide note. No manifesto. But then came the receipt. The duct tape. The bleach. The hunting knife. All purchased 3 days prior, on his mother's dime. And suddenly, it all made a horrific kind of sense. This wasn't rage. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was calculated, planned, premeditated. He waited, watched, and then, when no one was around, he executed the two people who had loved him the most. What do you do with a story like this? How do you mourn someone who died believing in the very person who killed her? How do you explain to a town that evil wasn't outside the house? It was sitting at the dinner table. And more importantly, how do we stop this from happening again? Because this kind of story, it's not rare. It's not a fluke. It's a warning, and it deserves to be told. Stay with me. There's more you need to know. To understand how it all came to this, how a mother's faith became a fatal flaw, you have to go back. Before the blood, before the silence, before the welcome home banner on the porch. You have to go back to when Daron Jenkins was still just a boy. Because no one is born a killer. Not even him. Daryn was Dana's firstborn. She had him young, barely out of high school. It was just the two of them at first. No stable father figure, no real support system. Just a teenage mother doing her best. And for a while it worked. Daryn was quiet, yes. Withdrawn, sometimes. But what little boy wouldn't be, growing up without structure? Dana did everything she could. School meetings, counseling appointments, church on Sundays. But something in Daryn never settled. He had a temper. At 6, he broke his cousin's toy truck, then laughed about it. At 10, he punched a classmate in the throat for bumping into him at recess. By 13, he'd been suspended twice for threatening teachers. But Dana, she saw the best in him. She always did. She'd sit across from teachers and say, "He's just hurting. He needs love." She told relatives, "He's got a good heart. It's just buried under pain." She told herself, "If I just love him enough, it'll be okay." And when he turned 15, the same age Daryn would be when he died, Daryn started running away from home. Not for a few hours. For days. He'd come back smelling like weed, eyes glazed, voice sharp. Sometimes he'd curse at her. Sometimes he'd punch the walls. Once he punched her. She didn't call the police. She said he didn't mean it. But the neighborhood started whispering. Said he was running with bad kids. That he'd gotten involved in small-time theft. That he was hanging around known gang members. And by the time he turned 19, the whispers became records. Breaking and entering. Assault. Theft of firearms. He was sentenced to serve time at a correctional facility, 3 years. Dana visited him almost every week. She brought care packages, prayed over him, wrote him letters filled with scripture and love. And while Daryn was racking up infractions in prison, fighting, threatening staff, getting denied parole, Dana kept believing. She kept telling herself, this isn't who he is. Even when the warden told her, he's not ready for release. Even when other inmates' parents warned her, your boy's dangerous. Even when her own relatives said, maybe this time, don't open the door. Dana smiled, shook her head, and said the same 7 words to everyone. He just needs to come back home. March 25th, 2025. Daryn walked out of prison. Not because he'd earned it, but because legally his time was up. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He didn't even thank the guards on his way out. Dana was waiting for him in the parking lot. She brought balloons. She'd cooked his favorite dinner, barbecue chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese. She told him, you're going to start fresh. He said, yeah. But something was wrong. The first night back, he barely spoke. He went straight to the guest room, locked the door. Dana chalked it up to adjustment. You've been away, she said. You need time. But then came the pacing, the late nights, the staring. He'd walk the hallway in silence, past Daryn's door, back and forth. He didn't eat with the family, didn't laugh, didn't smile. And when Daryn tried to talk to him, hey man, want to watch a movie? Daryn just said, "Don't touch my stuff," and closed the door. The boy who left home in cuffs didn't come back healed. He came back hollow. And maybe Dana knew, maybe in the quiet moments, in between her prayers and her casseroles, maybe she felt it. But she said nothing, because to speak it would be to admit it. And to admit it would mean she had failed. So she ignored the signs, even when he asked for money, even when he disappeared for hours, even when he came home one night with blood on his sleeve and no explanation. She gave him $200. He said it was for clothes, but the receipt would later tell the truth. Bleach, duct tape, a hunting knife, purchased at a hardware store 3 miles away, 3 days before the murders. March 31st, 2025, 5:30 p.m. Neighbors heard nothing. No screams, no glass breaking, no alarms, just silence. A silence that swallowed a mother and her child whole. Inside the house, detectives pieced together a timeline. Dana was likely attacked first. She was near the front door, her body slumped near the entryway table, the same one where she'd kept her Bible. She had over a dozen stab wounds, defensive marks on her arms. She fought hard. Daryn's room was further down the hall. Investigators believe he heard something. Maybe his mother screamed. Maybe she called his name. Whatever happened, he ran. But he didn't make it far. They found him just outside the bathroom, collapsed, stabbed 8 times. His blood trailed down the hall. One hand stretched toward the door, as if he'd tried to reach her, as if they'd died trying to get to one another. A mother and her son, slaughtered in their own home, by the man they just welcomed back. The same man Dana had prayed over. The same brother Daryn had tried to befriend. And Daryn, he didn't leave. He didn't run. He stayed in the living room and waited. Police found him sitting in the same chair he'd sat in as a child. Blood on his clothes. A blank look on his face. And when they read him his rights, he nodded. No remorse. No tears. Nothing. Just silence. The kind that makes your spine go cold. There are certain kinds of grief that don't just crack you open. They split your entire world in half. The town of Wilson County had known loss before. Car accidents, illness, natural death. But not like this. Not a mother and her teenage son. Not murdered in cold blood. Not by their own blood. The house on Maplewood Lane became a shrine. Neighbors left flowers. Teachers from Daryn's school lit candles. One of Dana's church sisters left a handwritten note that read, "You gave him everything, even when he had nothing left to give back. Rest now. You've done enough." The local news picked up the story. Then regional outlets. Then true crime podcasts. Everyone wanted to know, why would he do it? But Daryn wasn't talking. Not during the arrest. Not during interrogation. Not even during the preliminary hearing. He sat there, expressionless, as the prosecution listed the charges. 2 counts of first-degree murder. Aggravated assault. Evidence tampering. His public defender tried to suggest mental illness. Said maybe the time in prison had broken him. Maybe he had undiagnosed schizophrenia. But a court-ordered psychological evaluation found him competent to stand trial. Coherent. Calculating. Aware. That left only one conclusion. He knew exactly what he was doing. The trial began 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. Press, friends, teachers, pastors. The air was heavy. You could feel the weight of every unspoken question. Why her? Why Daryn? Why now? Prosecutors laid out the timeline. The receipt from the hardware store. The bleach bottle found in the garage. The gloves hidden beneath the bed. But it was the 911 call that turned stomachs. Daryn never made one. It was a neighbor, an elderly woman who stopped by to drop off a casserole, who saw the blood through the window. But when police arrested Daryn, body cam footage showed something chilling. As they cuffed him, an officer asked, "Is there anyone else in the house?" Daryn replied, "Not anymore." Those 2 words would be replayed again and again in court. Not anymore. Cold. Flat. Like the lives he'd ended meant nothing. The prosecution's closing argument was simple and brutal. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't an accident. This was the deliberate execution of a mother who believed in redemption, and a boy who only ever wanted to know his brother. Daron Jenkins did not snap. He planned. He prepared. And he performed the ultimate betrayal. The defense? They had nothing. They couldn't explain the motive. couldn't justify the timeline, couldn't unstain the knife found in his duffel bag, with both victims' DNA on it. And Daryn? He didn't testify. He sat there, blank, as if he weren't even present. Like this was just another Tuesday. Like two people hadn't died. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. When they returned, the courtroom held its breath. The foreperson stood, hands trembling. On the count of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Gasps. Cries. One of Dana's sisters sobbed into her hands. The judge wasted no time. Mr. Jenkins, this court sentences you to life in prison, without the possibility of parole, for the premeditated, callous, and irredeemable murder of your own family. There was no joy in that courtroom, no celebration, because justice, when it arrives too late, it still leaves a hole. The Jenkins home was sold 6 months later. No one wanted it. The walls had been scrubbed, repainted, but the air still felt haunted. Daryn's school planted a tree in his memory. They held a candlelight vigil on what would have been his 16th birthday. And Dana? Her church turned her favorite prayer into a mural outside the food pantry she used to volunteer at. Even when I am weary, I will love with my whole heart. But here's the thing most people don't understand about stories like this. They don't end when the verdict is read. They don't end when the gavel drops. They echo in every child who now locks their door at night, in every mother who wonders if she's doing enough, in every brother who's left behind, watching the headlines, wondering what could have been. Because this wasn't just a crime. It was a tragedy that began long before the knife was ever lifted. A tragedy of denial, of misplaced hope, of a love so deep it ignored the warning signs until it was too late. But let it be known, justice did come. Not just for Dana, not just for Daryn, but for every voice that begged her to see what was coming. Because this time, the system didn't fail. This time, the monster was caught. And this time, however late, truth was louder than blood. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. We upload new true crime content daily, covering cases you know and many you don't. Stick with us as we bring you more stories that deserve to be heard. See you in the next video.